After carrying over a ton of momentum from the Mariner series and parlaying that into an 11-0 blowout victory on Friday against the Cubs, the weekend didn't quite go as planned for the Yankees as they dropped the final two games of the series 5-2 and 4-1 over the weekend. They will enter the MLB All-Star break in a better spot than they were a couple weeks ago, but still not in a great spot compared to where they should have been based on how they were playing earlier this season. They will be 53 and 43 entering the break. They will be, as I'm considering to look at this game right now, depending on the result. I'm recording this on Sunday evening, so the Blue Jays and the Athletics are still currently playing right now. So the Yankees will either be 2 or 3 games back of the Blue Jays for the lead in the American League East, and then the Yankees will be 3.5 games up on the Tampa Bay Rays as they sit in the number 1 wild card spot and the 3.5 games up over being outside of the playoff picture. So 3.5 games up on a playoff spot, and but the Boston Red Sox, who have won 10 in a row entering the break, are very much on their heels. But we're going to take some time this week. Obviously, the Yankees aren't going to play another baseball game again until Friday night in Atlanta. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we're going to have really the entire week's worth of podcasts this week are going to be kind of bigger picture topics. In addition to the early week podcast, kind of breaking down, we'll talk about Jazz's performance in the home run derby and preview the All-Star game for the Yankees on Tuesday morning's podcast. And then on Wednesday, we will break down how the Yankees performed that did get an opportunity to play in the All-Star game. But and then we'll spend the back part of the week, Thursday and Friday's episodes, really kind of honing in on what the Yankees are going to need from a trade deadline standpoint. We'll probably spend one episode on hitting options, particularly at third base, and then we will spend an episode on pitching options, heavily focused on some bullpen arms. So we'll be a little bit all over the place this week as the Yankees and the whole MLB world sort of reset around the All-Star break. But if we're going to use this show today to kind of just do an overall State of the Union. Maybe State of the Union's a little bit over dramatic here because I don't want this to be a 20, 25-minute show today. But, the Yankees have had a very topsy-turvy first half of the year. Obviously got off to a blistering hot start and then have kind of dealt with a couple different valleys here in June. And at times in July, and they've kind of put themselves in an interesting spot now where I think if you would have told me at the start of the season that the Yankees would be 10 games over 500 at the All-Star break, 3.5 games up on a playoff spot, and somewhere between 2 and 3 games back of the division, while also having a 111-plus run differential, I probably would have taken that. And I would say as you start to look at what they're on pace for this year, if I do the quick math, and doing math on the podcast is, never a hose, but they're on pace for about a 90-win season right now. And obviously that's not, the most amazing thing you've ever seen. But if you talk about what I was thinking about in the preseason, I thought this was a low 90s win team. That's what I talked about. And if you take a look at the expected win-loss, for those that buy into that, they've been a lot better. They should be 59. They're about 6 wins different in their expected win-loss compared to what their actual win-loss total is. But so basically right now they're on a 90-win pace. And obviously that's not exactly what you're hoping for, but for the context last year, you need 86 wins to make a wild card spot in 2024. You needed 89 wins to make a wild card spot in 2023, 86 wins in 2022. So, the 3 years now of the new playoff format, 86, 89, and 86 got the job done. In terms of what the playoffs look like in the American League, and the Yankees are on pace for 90 right now. So they're kind of where it's so weird because I would say if we I guess not fast forward, we rewind all the way back to March. The Yankees are kind of where I thought they would be just on an overall record wise. But the journey and the path to get here has been wild, to say the least, with major high points and major low points. So, but as the Yankees go into the break, 5-5 in their last 10, they do have the top run differential in the American League and the second best in baseball, only behind the Chicago Cubs, the team that just took 2 or 3 for them in New York. But there's still a lot of things to be excited about for this Yankees squad, and I just think it's a little bit unfortunate that they've had some bullpen issues, which we'll talk a lot about as we get to later in the week, and we talk about some of the players that they can potentially start to target because they're going to need multiple bullpen arms, and I think you look at Sunday's game was just a microcosm of that sort of example. Will Warren gives you a pretty good start, probably gets taken a little bit earlier than I would have wanted, and then Ian Hamilton and then to some extent Tim Hill just not able to get the job done. But overall, I feel like if you look at what the Yankees have been able to do this year, you have to be impressed with, obviously Max Fried has been amazing, but you have to also be extremely impressed with what Carlos Rodon, who will be representing them in the All-Star game with Max Fried pulling out with the blister. Although technically I believe he pulled out before the blister, but obviously having the blister he will absolutely not be there. And I do wonder if he's going to end up starting in that series against Atlanta now. So I guess it's a good time to have some time off, almost basically a full week off between starts. So let's hope and see what that does. But I would not be shocked if he had to miss a start. But Clark Schmidt before the injury, obviously was pitching really well, but obviously we're not going to see him at this point. We're not going to see him until 2027. But yeah, I think for the most part that you have to be impressed with what the Yankees have been able to do from a starting pitching standpoint to this point, particularly considering that obviously you don't have Garrett Cole for the entire season. After a very, very, very rough start to his Yankees career, Devin Williams has really locked in lately and is looking exactly like the player that the Yankees acquired in the offseason. Luke Weaver looks pretty good. When Fernando Cruz comes off the IL, he has shown that he can be a really exciting young pitcher. And I think even depending on what role that they have him in when Ryan Yarbrough comes off the IL, he's going to have a role somewhere. But I think you start to look at the other guys in the bullpen, the Mark Leiters, the Scott Efroses, the Clayton Beaters, J.D. Brubaker, Ian Hamilton, some of those guys, even Jonathan Loaiziga, who hasn't been really good for them. Like they're going to need some help in that pen. And I think that's going to be a key focus to them, in addition to obviously adding a third baseman. But as we go into the All-Star break, Aaron Judge, again, the amazing story, 35 home runs right now, 81 runs batted in. Nearly a 1,200 OPS, batting .355, a .462 on base. Just does everything well. Great plays in the outfield. He leads the league in many major categories, particularly in wins above replacement. Cody Bellinger's really, really coming on lately and looks like a key piece to this team long term. Jazz Chisholm is killing the ball. We'll see him in the All-Star game and in the Home Run Derby this week. And there's been some real bright spots with some other guys. I know he has kind of, had a little bit of a regression to the mean a little bit, but Trent Grisham's having an amazing season. Ben Rice, I know if you look at just the raw numbers, you might be like, all right, like the power's there, but really not seeing a lot else. One of the unluckiest hitters in baseball. Every metric on Ben Rice right now is showing that he should be significantly putting up even more production than he already has this year. Austin Wells kind of got over his struggles in the middle part of the season and is starting to turn things around a little bit. Jason Dominguez is playing the best ball of the season going into the All-Star break. And Giancarlo Stanton, after coming off the IL, had some struggles there, power starting to come back for him. So there are a lot of really encouraging things about this team right now there are still some concerns. I think Anthony Volpe is a problem for this team. Third base is a problem for this team. Middle relief is a problem for this team, and I think you start to look at even the back end of the rotation is probably a problem for this team right now with Yarbrough out and Schmidt out. However, Luis Gil will be coming back soon-ish. I'd imagine sometime before the end of the month we'll see Luis Gil. So there's a lot to be excited about with this Yankees team. There's a lot to be concerned about with this Yankees team, but overall they're still sitting in a good spot. I want to be careful about saying this, so I don't want to get old takes exposed here. I don't think Toronto is a better team than them. If I am the Yankees, I would be more concerned. And again, I understand the Blue Jays are in first place. I don't want to be disrespectful. I like the Blue Jays, but I think they're a fringe wild card team that's just hot at the moment. I would be more concerned about Boston and Tampa Bay. And Boston was the team that I looked at the beginning of the year as I thought that was a sneaky playoff team. And then they kind of got to be the popular sneaky playoff team pick. And then at that point, it's like, well, if everybody's talking about you as the sneaky team, then I guess you're not the sneaky team anymore. Obviously, they're as hot as can be right now entering the break on a 10-game winning streak. But, even despite the Rafael Devers trade, there are some pieces of that team that are performing extremely well. And you look at the hitters like Cidian Rafaela, Trevor Story, some of those guys that had flashed at times in Rafaela's case as a youngster, and Story is kind of having that post-hype rebound when people kind of wrote him off as being done. Those guys are performing at such high levels right now, and they still haven't gotten the full scope out of a guy like Jarren Duran. But I like what they're doing so far. Obviously, Garrett Crochet's in the AL Cy Young conversation. Brian Bayo is doing really deserves more love for what he's doing in that rotation. I love the different types of pieces they have in their bullpen from guys like Garrett Whitlock on down. Chapman is having one of the best. I mean, I know obviously he's not well liked among Yankee fans. I'm not a fan of him personally from both a personal standpoint and then the way his Yankees career ended. But he is having an unbelievable season at the back end of Boston's bullpen as well. So if I'm the Yankees, I would be a little bit more concerned about those two teams. However, you're not good enough to just kind of pick and choose who you're concerned about. And the Yankees have to be better in the division in the second half, and I think that's going to be the key as they look to make additions in the bullpen, maybe at third base. Their record inside the division is not good enough, because if you start to look at the difference here, the Orioles are 500 in the East. The Rays are 13-17 in the East. Boston 20-13. Toronto 16-13. The Yankees are 10-16 in the East. That's really bad. And they're going to have to, you're going to have to win these. You have to win division games, period, but you're really going to have to start winning, these division games in general, because you now do not have the benefit of the doubt anymore. You blew that big lead you had, and now you're chasing, and you're trying to hold off again. You're going to be either 2 or 3 games behind Toronto going to the break. You're only 1 game up on Boston. You're 3.5 games up on Tampa. And those 3 teams, for you, in one way or the other, Toronto, Boston, and Tampa will either be for the, one of them is going to be for the division, but the other 2 are going to be positioning in the wild card, or in the case right now, as it stands going into the break, one of them will miss. And right now, Tampa Bay is just below the cut line, and they have a real rough second half with a ton of road games on their schedule. So the Yankees are going to have to be a lot better in their division. They're going to have to get a lot more reinforcements, and we will break down what they could be, who they should target, maybe what a potential return could look like for the teams that are trying to deal those players, and we'll get to that later in the week. But we will be back tomorrow to preview the Yankees that will be playing in the 2025 MLB All-Star Game, and also break down how Jazz Chisholm Jr. performed in his first ever home run derby right here on the Bombers Beat Podcast.